In the vastness of space, humanity had always wondered if we were alone. Turns out we weren't, and that revelation came with a price. The year was 2457, and Earth had already colonized Mars and established thriving settlements across the solar system. We thought we were ready for anything the cosmos could throw at us. We were wrong. I still remember that cold February morning when our long-range scanners picked up the first signs of the Galactic Empire. Not just random alien signals, but an organized, massive fleet of warships heading straight for our solar system. They called themselves the Draxians, and they had conquered over 30 civilizations across 3 galaxies. Their message was simple: surrender or be destroyed. What they didn't expect was our response. You see, humanity had learned a few things during our centuries of warfare and survival. While other species might have evolved through peaceful cooperation, we had forged ourselves in the fires of conflict. Every major breakthrough in our history, from the wheel to nuclear fusion, came from our need to overcome challenges that should have destroyed us. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force stood at the bridge of the EDF Resilient, watching the holographic display of the approaching Draxian fleet. Her weathered face showed no fear, only a slight smile that her crew had learned to recognize. It was the same smile that had preceded our victories in the Mars Rebellion and the Jupiter Crisis. "Send them our response," she ordered, her voice steady and clear. The communications officer nodded, transmitting the message we had prepared. It was just 3 words: "You should run." The Draxians, with their crystalline ships and energy weapons that could shatter moons, actually laughed. Their supreme commander, visible on our screens with his iridescent scales and multiple eyes, dismissed our warning as the desperate bravado of a primitive species. They had never faced humans in combat before. They had never experienced our particular brand of innovative warfare. What followed was the greatest display of human ingenuity and determination in our history. While the Empire expected us to deploy our ships in traditional formation, we had other plans. Years of playing strategy games, reading science fiction, and studying unconventional warfare had prepared us for this moment. We had weapons they couldn't comprehend because they operated on principles their highly advanced but rigid minds had never considered. The first wave of their attack faltered when they encountered our experimental quantum disruption fields, technology we had developed not through centuries of peaceful research, but through our constant drive to find new ways to defend ourselves. Their shields, designed to repel energy weapons, had no defense against our gravity manipulation devices, inspired by countless science fiction stories that had become our technological prophecies. As their front line crumbled, the Supreme Commander's smug expression transformed into something approaching concern. This wasn't how conquests usually went for them. Their sophisticated battle computers, programmed with millennia of warfare tactics, couldn't predict what we would do next because we didn't follow any conventional military doctrine. But that was just the beginning. As their massive fleet regrouped for a second assault, Captain Chen activated our secret weapon, a system we had built not because we knew aliens existed, but because humanity had always prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. As the device powered up, she broadcast one final message to the Galactic Empire. "We tried to warn you. Now, let us show you why every species in this galaxy should think twice before challenging Earth." The battle that followed would change the course of galactic history forever, but that's another story for another time. The secret weapon we had developed wasn't just a single device. It was humanity's greatest hits collection, a combination of everything we learned from centuries of preparing for worst-case scenarios. While the Draxians had evolved focusing on energy weapons and shield technology, we had developed in every possible direction, driven by our endless what-if scenarios and countless hours of science fiction inspiration. The first phase of our counterattack began with what we called the Ghost Protocol. Thousands of holographic Earth ships appeared among our real vessels, each one indistinguishable from the actual warships. It was technology originally developed for entertainment, perfected for warfare. The Draxian targeting systems couldn't tell which ships were real and which weren't, forcing them to either waste their ammunition or hesitate to fire at all. Captain Chen watched as confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Their rigid military doctrine had no protocols for dealing with an enemy that turned entertainment technology into weapons of war. Launch the swarm, she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's determination. Millions of microdrones, each no bigger than a honeybee, poured out from our ships, another innovation born from our study of nature and our paranoid preparation for any threat. These tiny machines carried quantum entanglement disruptors, technology the Draxians had dismissed as theoretically impossible. But humans had never cared much about what others thought was impossible. The Supreme Commander's face appeared on our screens again, but this time the arrogance was gone. "What manner of warfare is this?" he demanded, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly in what we later learned was their species' expression of extreme stress. "Your civilization is barely 1,000 years old. These technologies should be beyond your capability." "That's your first mistake," Captain Chen replied, allowing herself a small smile. "You measured our civilization's age by our space travel. You should have measured it by our survival instinct." The swarm reached their ships, passing through their energy shields as if they weren't there. The Draxians had built their defenses assuming all attacks would come from weapons they understood. They never considered that a primitive species would think to attack at the quantum level. Meanwhile, our ground forces on Mars and Luna had activated the planetary defense systems, massive electromagnetic pulse generators disguised as atmospheric processors. Another example of humanity's tendency to build dual-purpose technology, always with one eye on the possibility of invasion. The Draxian fleet's first line of ships began to drift, their quantum-based systems disrupted by our swarm. Their crews, trained to fight conventional battles, found themselves facing an enemy that broke every rule of warfare they had learned over millennia of conquest. But the Supreme Commander wasn't the leader of the galaxy's largest empire for nothing. As his front line crumbled, he ordered his reserve fleet to advance, over 10,000 ships that had been holding back, watching and learning. "Your tricks are impressive," he transmitted, "but you've shown your hand too early. No species can stand against the full might of the Empire." Captain Chen's response was to activate the second phase of our defense. The lunar surface began to shift, revealing something that made the Supreme Commander's scales pale to a lighter shade. Hidden beneath the regolith, concealed from all scanning technology, was humanity's ultimate insurance policy, something we had built not because we knew we would need it, but because we had always imagined we might. As the massive structure emerged from the lunar surface, the Supreme Commander's transmission cut off mid-sentence. The real battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy why we had survived everything our own world had thrown at us. From beneath the lunar surface rose humanity's greatest engineering achievement, the orbital defense matrix, not just a weapon, but a testament to human paranoia and ingenuity combined. Thousands of crystalline structures emerged, forming a geometric pattern that seemed to defy the laws of physics. We had reverse-engineered this technology not from alien artifacts or ancient discoveries, but from our own theoretical physics and countless hours of what-if scenarios. The Supreme Commander's silence was telling. His species, for all their advanced technology, had never considered building weapons into celestial bodies themselves. It went against their logical, orderly approach to warfare. But humans, we had been preparing for alien invasions since before we had proof aliens existed. "You have one last chance," Captain Chen broadcasted across all frequencies. "Retreat, and we'll let you leave with your fleet intact. Stay, and you'll understand why every human child's first question about space is how do we defend against it?" The response came in the form of a massive energy surge from the Empire's reserve fleet. They were charging their primary weapons, planet killers that had ended civilizations before. The Supreme Commander had chosen to go all in, believing that no defense could withstand their combined firepower. What happened next demonstrated why humans had survived every catastrophe our species had faced. The orbital defense matrix didn't just activate, it began to reshape the space around it. Decades of research into space-time manipulation, originally aimed at faster-than-light travel, had given us something far more potent, the ability to control the battlefield itself. The Empire's energy weapons fired, releasing enough power to shatter a planet. But the space between our fleets had become something else entirely. The Matrix created what we called gravity lenses, points where space itself curved and bent. Their energy beams, instead of hitting our fleet, began to spiral and curve, creating a deadly dance of light and power. Impossible! The Supreme Commander's transmission crackled through. Your species, you're meant to be primitives. Your technology, it's not meant to exist yet. His voice carried something we had never heard in Adraction before: fear. Captain Chen's response was cut short as the Empire launched their desperate countermove. From the heart of their fleet emerged their superweapon, the Planet Breaker, a ship larger than Earth's moon. Its surface rippled with energy patterns that had destroyed countless civilizations before us. But we had planned for this too. Every science fiction story, every doomsday prediction, every wild theory had been considered in our defenses. The swarm of micro-drones regrouped, forming intricate patterns that our ancestors would have recognized from their own art and architecture. We had learned long ago that the most effective patterns in nature often made the most effective patterns in warfare. The Matrix's crystalline structures began to pulse with a blue light that seemed to resonate with something fundamental in the universe itself. Our ancestors had looked up at the stars with equal parts wonder and wariness, and that combination had driven us to create defenses that bordered on the impossible. As the Planet Breaker charged its main weapon, Captain Chen gave the order we had all been waiting for. The order that would show the galaxy why humans had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and our own destructive tendencies. The order that would demonstrate why every spacefaring race should thank their lucky stars that humanity had chosen to be peaceful explorers rather than conquerors. Initialize the Prometheus Protocol, she commanded, her voice steady despite knowing what would come next. Show them why humans don't just plan for the future. We plan for every future. The Matrix's light changed from blue to a deep, pulsing red, and the space around the lunar surface began to warp in ways that made even our most hardened veterans close their eyes. The final battle for humanity's place in the galaxy was about to begin, and we were about to show the Empire why they should have heeded our warning to run. The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's ultimate gambit, not just a weapon, but a fundamental reimagining of what warfare could be. As the Matrix pulsed with that deep red light, something unexpected happened. The Empire's Planet Breaker fired its main weapon, but instead of the expected beam of destructive energy, there was only a flicker of light. The Supreme Commander's voice crackled through our comms, this time with undisguised panic. What have you done? The quantum fields. They're inverting. We had done what the Empire thought impossible. We hadn't just defended against their weapon. We had changed the rules of physics in the surrounding space. But victory celebrations froze in our throats as our sensors detected something new. The space behind the Empire's fleet began to ripple, and through that distortion came ships we had never seen before. Ships that didn't match any of our records or the Empire's known allies. The new arrivals' vessels were organic-looking, moving like vast space-borne creatures, rather than constructed ships. Captain, our science officer called out, her voice tense. Those ships, they're not just coming through space, they're coming through time. The Prometheus Protocol hadn't just affected space. It had done what we had theorized, but never dared to test. It had torn open the barriers between different timelines. The Supreme Commander's next transmission was aimed not at us, but at the newcomers. The Nexus fleet, but you're just a legend. A story to frighten children. For the first time, we saw true terror in those alien eyes. These newcomers were apparently something that even the mighty Empire feared. Captain Chen stood from her command chair, her expression grim but determined. All ships, hold position, she ordered. Let's see how this plays out before we commit. It was the kind of cautious strategic thinking that had kept humanity alive through countless crises. The Nexus fleet's ships moved with impossible grace, taking up positions that formed a perfect geometric pattern around both our forces and the Empire's. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, adapting to the distorted space created by our matrix. A new voice echoed through all our communication channels, speaking in a language that somehow everyone understood perfectly. The humans have done it, the voice declared. They have proven themselves worthy of the great test. Test? Every human commander shared the same confused look. We hadn't been fighting for survival. We had been taking an exam we didn't know existed. The Supreme Commander's response was immediate and furious. We are the Galactic Empire. We do not participate in tests. We conquer. We rule. His transmission cut off as one of the Nexus ships simply blinked his command ship out of existence, only to have it reappear a moment later, completely powered down. Captain Chen's tactical display suddenly lit up with new information as our systems finally decoded the energy patterns coming from the Nexus fleet. What we saw made even our most seasoned officers catch their breath. These weren't just ships from another part of space. They were humanity's descendants, from a future timeline we had just accidentally made contact with. The voice spoke again, this time with a hint of pride that felt strangely familiar. For millennia, we have watched civilizations rise and fall, but only humanity, our ancestors, had the unique combination of paranoia, creativity, and determination to develop weapons that could break the barriers of space-time itself. As this revelation sank in, our sensors detected new temporal rifts forming throughout the solar system. The real battle wasn't going to be between humans and the Empire. It was going to be for the very fabric of reality itself. And somewhere in the vast command complex of the orbital defense matrix, the Prometheus Protocol continued its work, unknowingly drawing us toward a confrontation that would make our fight with the Empire look like a simple training exercise. The temporal rifts spread across our solar system like cracks in glass, each one showing glimpses of different timelines, some where humanity had fallen, others where we had become something beyond our current understanding. The Nexus fleet moved with purpose, their organic ships forming an intricate pattern that seemed to stabilize the spreading tiers in reality. The Empire was never the real threat, the voice from our future explained. They were simply the catalyst needed to push humanity toward developing the Prometheus Protocol. But now we face a greater challenge. The rifts you've created are drawing the attention of something we've been hiding from across every timeline. Before Captain Chen could respond, space itself seemed to darken. Not the usual darkness of space, but something deeper, as if reality itself was being drained of light. The Empire's ships, still powered down, began to drift away from the anomaly forming at the heart of our solar system. "They're here," the future human commander transmitted, their voice carrying the weight of centuries of hidden knowledge. The Void Hunters, beings that exist between realities, feeding on civilizations that discover dimensional manipulation. We've been running from them across thousands of timelines. That's when humanity's greatest strength came into play, our ability to adapt and unite in the face of extinction. Captain Chen didn't hesitate. "Fleet-wide broadcast," she commanded. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega, and get me a direct link to the Nexus fleet commander." Protocol Omega was our last resort strategy, something we had developed but never thought we'd use. Every human ship began to power up their experimental quantum cores, while the orbital defense matrix shifted its crystalline structures into a new configuration. We had designed these systems to work independently, but now they would work together in ways we had only theorized. The Supreme Commander, watching from his powerless flagship, finally understood. "Your species," he transmitted, "you didn't develop all these technologies to fight us. You developed them because you somehow knew. You knew about them." His voice carried a mixture of fear and respect. "Not knew," Captain Chen corrected. "We imagined. Every story, every nightmare, every wild theory our species ever had about threats from beyond the stars. We prepared for all of them. And now—" She paused as the Void Hunters began to take physical form, their presence bending light and reality around them. "Now we find out if humanity's paranoia was actually our greatest gift." The Nexus fleet commander's voice rang through our comms. "All ships, synchronize your quantum fields with our temporal matrices. What our ancestors built in fear, we will perfect in necessity." The future humans had brought something else with them. The knowledge of how to turn our defensive systems into something far more powerful. As the Void Hunters approached, reality distorting around their unknowable forms, every human ship, past and future, activated their systems simultaneously. The orbital defense matrix pulsed with energy that rippled across time itself. The Empire's ships, caught in the quantum field, became unexpected anchors, their advanced technology amplifying the effect. What happened next would be debated by scholars for generations to come. The combined power of humanity's defensive networks, the Nexus fleet's temporal technology, and the Empire's trapped ships created something new, a quantum lattice that existed across all timelines simultaneously. The Void Hunters, creatures of between space, found themselves caught in a trap built from the very fabric of reality. Now, Captain Chen ordered, and every human vessel from both timelines channeled their power into the Matrix. The quantum lattice collapsed inward, taking the Void Hunters with it into a space between spaces, a prison of our own making. As the light returned to normal and the temporal rifts began to seal, the Nexus fleet commander transmitted one final message. Remember this day, ancestors, not as the day humanity defended itself from the Empire, but as the day we learned why we had always been so driven to defend ourselves. The universe is vaster and stranger than we imagined, and humanity's greatest strength was never our technology. It was our inability to stop imagining what might be waiting out there in the dark. The Empire's ships slowly regained power, but the Supreme Commander no longer looked at Earth with conquest in mind. Instead, he transmitted a simple message. We came to conquer a primitive species. Instead, we found the guardians of reality itself. The galaxy will know of this day. As the temporal rifts sealed and the Nexus fleet prepared to return to their own timeline, Captain Chen looked out at the stars, forever changed by the knowledge that humanity's seemingly irrational fear of the unknown had actually been an instinct passed down through time itself. In the days that followed, humanity faced a new reality. The Empire's fleet had withdrawn to their borders, but not as defeated enemies. Instead, they requested to establish diplomatic relations, not as conquerors, but as equals. The Supreme Commander's final report to his council, which he shared with Earth as a gesture of good faith, described humans not as primitives, but as the species that guards the walls of reality itself. The Nexus fleet's departure left us with more than just victory. They had shared crucial technical data about the quantum lattice we had created, ensuring we could maintain the prison holding the Void Hunters. But more importantly, they left us with understanding. All those years of science fiction, all those seemingly paranoid preparations, had been more than just human nature. They had been echoes of a future we were always destined to face. Captain Chen stood at the observation deck of the orbital defense matrix, watching engineers integrate the new modifications. The crystalline structures now pulsed with a steady blue light, maintaining the quantum barriers that kept our reality safe. You know, she said to her assembled crew, for all our preparations, we never actually prepared for success. The Matrix had been modified to serve as both a defense system and a monitoring station for temporal stability. Teams of scientists worked around the clock, studying the data from our brief contact with our future selves. Every new discovery seemed to confirm what we had always suspected, that humanity's place in the universe was far more complex than we had imagined. The Empire, true to their word, began sharing their technological knowledge with us, not because they had to, but because they understood something fundamental had changed. Humanity had proven we weren't just another species to be conquered. We were the unexpected guardians of something far more precious than territory or resources. As for the Void Hunters, our descendants had confirmed what our worst nightmares had hinted at. They were still out there, in the spaces between realities. But now they knew that at least one species had the ability and the will to stand against them. Our prison wouldn't hold them forever, but it would hold them long enough for humanity to prepare properly this time. The scientific community buzzed with new theories and discoveries. Each piece of future technology we had glimpsed, each temporal theory we had accidentally proven correct, opened new avenues of research. But perhaps the most profound change was in how we viewed ourselves. We spent so long looking up at the stars with fear, Captain Chen wrote in her final mission report, that we never realized that fear was actually wisdom. Every scary story we told ourselves, every defense we built against impossible threats was our inheritance from our future selves, a survival instinct passed down through time itself. The Empire's ships finally departed our solar system 3 months later, but not before establishing permanent diplomatic channels. As their fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, the Supreme Commander transmitted one final message. "We came to teach you your place in the galaxy. Instead, you taught us that sometimes the most powerful civilizations are not those who conquer the most worlds, but those who guard the most precious truths." As Earth entered this new era, our scientists continued to monitor the quantum lattice, our diplomats began building bridges with alien civilizations, and our engineers kept developing new defenses, not out of fear now, but out of understanding. We had finally learned why humanity had always been different, why we had always prepared for threats that seemed impossible. Looking out at the stars now, we no longer saw just points of light in the darkness. We saw our responsibility, not just to our own world or our own time, but to all realities. The Empire had warned us to run, but instead, we had shown them why running was never humanity's way. After all, somebody has to guard the walls of reality, and who better than the species that had spent its entire existence preparing for exactly that role?